Okay, so this is the third presentation, this is the final presentation. We'll come to the actual thing that we were wanted to focus on, the human soul. So let's start off with this again. Just a disclaimer: I'm not, I mean, I don't know. I haven't studied this formally. I've just read some books which Ron kindly gave me, and only from that I'm drawing this. Okay, so I like this quote from Chesterton. He says that mankind itself grows more remarkable when we compare it with the common life of nature. When people say that man is just another animal, another creature, yeah, he takes that claim and says, okay, if he's another creature, just compare him with the other creatures, and you will see that he's more remarkable than any of the other creatures. So we'll see how he is different from the other creatures now in this presentation. So last time the first one, we saw that the plant soul was concerned with nutrition, growth, and reproduction. And the plants interact physically or materially with the objects are external to them. So water, food, and it grows and reproduces and dies. Okay. And then we saw that the sensitive soul, which is one step higher than the plant soul, that is the animal soul, these have sense perceptions, and by the means of phantasms, they take in things which are outside themselves and they react to them by their appetites. And all their actions can be accounted by this sense perceptions, phantasms, and the instinct given to them by God for their own good. So the brute soul, the animal soul and the plant soul, they are bound to matter because they interact only with material things. Okay, so they cannot exist without matter. So that's why when a dog dies or a plant dies, the soul, or animal soul and the plant soul will die with it. Okay, now today we will see in this session, we will see the human soul. The human soul has these faculties, the human intellect and the human will. We'll also see the relationship of these human faculties of intellect and will to the lower faculties of the animal soul, sensitive soul. Okay, the first thing that we'll take up is the human intellect. Okay, human intellect, also called rational cognition. So rational cognition consists of three aspects. One is simple apprehension, the second one is judgment, and the third one is reasoning. So these are the powers of the human intellect, rational intellect. So what is simple apprehension? The first act that the rational soul does is it draws forth from individual objects that portion of that individual object which determines its nature and which is essential to it. And it disregards, it neglects all the rest. So when a human being sees the chair, he understands the concept of a chair. And he disregards the color, this particular shape, this particular size. He disregards those and he catches the essence of what actually a chair is. Okay? So this capacity is called apprehension because apprehension means abstraction. Abstraction means you draw forth from that thing what is essential to it. Apprehension also means grasping. Prehension means grasping with a hand. So abstraction and apprehension mean the same thing. Okay, so humans can do this. So grasping of an idea or a concept. The idea of or a concept is an intellectual image in inverted commas. It's not the same as a phantasm which the animals could do. So animals can see a thing outside themselves and it can take in the image of that particular thing, and that is a phantasm. But a human can take in from the phantasm, he can take in the concept of the thing. Okay, so this is the difference. Okay, and the idea is what is results from apprehension. So when I grasp what is a chair, I have the idea of a chair. That's the result of my apprehension. And this idea of the chair is a mental term. So this is in my thoughts. When I speak it out, it comes as a word. The oral term is a word. But in Greek, this mental term and the oral term have the same word for it. So these both say logos. You must be familiar with this word logos, right? The word was made flesh. Okay, that aside. Now we need to see what is the difference between the concept and a phantasm, because many of the philosophers, modern philosophers, they get confused between these two differences, and that's why they make a lot of mistakes. Okay, so a phantasm is an animal's, the brute soul's power. Humans have concepts. Okay, we also have phantasms, but we also have concepts. So the concept is a spiritual or an immaterial, supra-sensible image. A phantasm is a material and a sensible image. Okay, so I cannot really form an image of a concept in my mind. I can understand the term, I can understand the concept, but I cannot really form an image of it. What I do is I use phantasms to help me picture it in my mind. Okay, so when I think of a chair, in my mind, the concept of a chair, when I think of it, I will have an image of a chair, but I know that it is not this particular chair that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the whole concept of a chair. It can be of any shape, any size. The thing that is essential is that it should be something that we can sit on. Okay, so this is a concept, and it's different from a phantasm. The other difference is that the concept is universal. That means it is not found in one particular chair or one particular thing, but it is universal. It applies to all the chairs in the world. A phantasm is very individual. It is a picture of an individual object or a number of existing individuals whose points of distinction are ignored. So it is an animal can see different chairs and see that they are alike and form a phantasm, but it doesn't have a concept of a chair. It just has multiple phantasms called common phantasms. Okay. Another difference is the concept is precise, definite, distinct, and capable of analysis. So I can say chairs are for sitting. When I use this, I use it in a universal sense. It applies to all chairs. If it cannot be used for sitting, it's not a chair. Okay, but a phantasm represents phantasm which represents multiple objects, right? It's a common phantasm. Animals can do this, and it's not capable of exact analysis. We'll come to this again. I'll explain this a little more in detail later. Okay, a concept is peculiar to man. Only man is capable of forming a concept. A phantasm is common to man and to animals. Okay, so animals can see chairs and remember them, imagine them, but they cannot form a concept. Okay, so I was talking about this common phantasm. Animals also have certain phantasms called common phantasms, which is individual but with vagueness of detail. So dog sees a tree and it forms the picture of a tree, but not an idea of a tree. It forms a picture of a tree, a phantasm, and it goes and marks its territory there. But any object that resembles that phantasm vaguely, the dog will also go and do the same thing to that object, like an electric pole. Also, it will go and mark its territory. So this is a common phantasm which animals can have, but it's not really a concept. Okay, so this one important thing about our ideas, our concepts, is that all our ideas in our intellect, they come from our sense perception. So everything that we have, every idea that we have, come from senses. We draw them from the senses and make these concepts. We cannot form any concepts without the use of our senses. But we saw earlier in the first session that the senses are true to the object that they perceive. Okay, that means a tree gives an image of a tree itself. It cannot be false. Okay, it cannot cheat the animal into looking like something else. It really gives out that image.
Was unmuted.
Hello? Okay, so yeah, so that is why, since we get everything from our senses and our senses are reliable, our ideas, our concepts are also, our intellect is reliable. Okay, now we come to the second power, that is not power exactly, it's extension of it, of the intellect itself, a function of an intellect. It's a judgment. So a judgment is an act of the mind affirming or denying the relationship or an agreement between two different objective ideas. Okay, so two ideas we have and we make a connection between these two. That is called a judgment. A judgment which is expressed in words is called a proposition. Like how we said an idea expressed in words is a word. A judgment expressed in words is called a proposition. So an example is man is mortal. Man applies to all men. It's a universal concept. Mortality also is universal. So man is mortal. We have these two ideas and we connect them and say man is mortal. The is the connection. Okay, is the relationship. This is called a judgment. Okay, now further, reasoning. Reasoning is a mental act. It's a process of deriving judgments from judgments. Okay, so we have few judgments and then we derive another judgment from that. This act, the sequence of doing this, one judgment, you get a conclusion. From that judgment, you make another conclusion. So this chain is called reasoning. Okay, reasoning expressed in words is called argumentation. Okay, so we have an example. Man is mortal. Raju is a man. Okay, and then we say, okay, we conclude that Raju is mortal. Okay, or man is mortal. Americans. Okay, no, forget it. This example is sufficient. Okay, so you get the idea. So reason. Now, the intellect is ordered towards the truth. And so here's a picture. Okay, so we have at the bottom the light yellow one. This is the sensitive soul or the animal soul. The orange one is the human soul. So in the sensitive soul, the object, we see an object, let's say the sun or something, a star. We see it, it comes to us through our senses, to the sense cognition, and we react to it by the appetites. So this is the animal functions that we have. So we react by the appetites towards that object. Either we go towards the object or we withdraw from the object or remain neutral. Anyway, this is all falls in the realm of senses and sense cognition. And this we do through making a phantasm of the object that we see. Now, our rational soul, it apprehends, it draws forth, abstracts from these phantasms the idea or a concept. And this is what it uses to judge, to reason. Okay. So this is how the soul functions. Okay. Now coming to the second faculty of the human soul is the will. So just when we, like how the sensitive animal had senses, it also had a reaction to the object outside it, right? So it could take in an image and it could react to that image outside. So same way, the human soul, it takes in to itself ideas and it reacts to it. This reaction, this appetite, is called a will. Okay. So in general, the appetite is defined as any tendency of a being towards a good that is suitable to its own nature. So when the senses apprehend, when the animal apprehends by the means of senses, the appetite is a sensible appetite. It's also called the passions. So we saw last time that there are 11 passions, 11 chief passions. I won't go through it again. But these are sensitive appetites, they're common to humans and animals. If the tendency is towards the good is because of reason, then it's called the rational appetite or the will. Okay? So this is the will. Is it okay if everyone mutes their mics? Okay, so this is the will. This is the second faculty of the human soul. Now, another concept of the will is also freedom, freedom or liberty. It enables our will to choose for itself between two alternatives. So we apprehend an idea and we can choose also for ourselves between two alternatives. This is freedom, and we can, even if there's only one alternative, we can choose for it or choose not to choose it. Okay, decide not to choose it. Now, just like the intellect is always ordered towards the truth, the will is ordered towards the good. So anything we do it because we perceive it as good, whether it's a real good or not. Only because we think it's a good, we do that. So our will is always ordered towards the good. Intellect towards the truth, will towards the good. Reason informs the will about the good, and the will chooses it. The will is conceived as something blind. The will doesn't see the things outside. The intellect is what informs the will of the outside things, and the will chooses the good. Now, when it chooses a good, the will also chooses the methods to attain that good. So, if I want to go to, let's say, Starbucks, I also will choose the method that I will go by bus, by cab, by train. So, all this is also a part of the choosing of going to Starbucks. Okay, so these are included. So the means to attain that good is also part of the choosing will. So this will be important later on. I'll explain it. Okay. Now, the difference between the sense appetite and the rational appetite or the will is this: sensitive appetites are not truly free. They are free from extrinsic constraint, but not free from intrinsic necessity. What it means is, an animal, suppose a dog, sees a nice juicy bone, it will want it. It is ordered towards it. It has the appetite towards that juicy bone. Okay. Whether it's stopped or not, but it cannot help itself from wanting to go to it. Okay. So that's why animals, they are entirely irresponsible for their appetites. So when a dog does something naughty or does something thing. We don't say it is morally good. We say good dog, but we just don't mean that it's acted in a good way, like a human would. Okay, so brutes are irresponsible for their appetites. But we humans, we have the indirect power of controlling to a certain extent only the workings of our sense appetite. So when I see a cake, I can't be like a dog and just go and eat it because it's there. So I have the capacity to control myself and say and make a conscious judgment whether I want to eat it or not. So this is the difference between the rational and the sense appetite. So how do we do this? Okay, this is just some practical stuff. So how can we choose? Suppose I see a cake and it's very tempting. I'm in the shop and it's very tempting. There's certain ways we can do it. So this can apply to any other temptations also. So I'm just giving the simple example of seeing a cake in a shop. I can avoid external objects which excite this appetite. So I can avoid going to that shop or turn the other direction, or I can use other objects that will affect me differently. Suppose I'm sitting in the canteen and the menu is there and I want to eat the cake. I can order something else and eat it. Okay, so that I don't get tempted to eat the cake. Even if I cannot change my surroundings, I can recall phantasms of a different tendency and curtail my appetite. So I can control my sense appetite. I can withdraw my attention from that particular object. I can stop thinking of the cake and think of something boring like cricket or something. And that's how I control my appetite. I can, suppose I can't do that. I can compel my sense appetite to obedience. Yes, okay. Even if that my friend puts the cake in front of me and he's eating it with a lot of noise, I can just control my appetite and say, I will not eat it. Okay, I'll not order it. So this is the sixth one also. I can control the members of my body. Members means parts of my body. So as not to yield obedience to the animal instinct. I can stop my hand from eating the cake, even though I want to eat it. I can stop myself. So this is how our our higher faculties have a control over our sensitive appetites. So this is an image that the philosophers used to show the soul. So you see, it's a chariot. There is a charioteer, and there's a man riding the chariot, and there are horses. Okay, so these horses, some of the horses are the concupiscible passions, appetites, and some of them are the irascible passions or the irascible appetites. So this one is we dealt with this in the last session. So these draw us towards something. Now the will controls these passions. The will is blindfolded, but he controls these passions. The intellect is telling the will which direction this chariot needs to go. So the will control the senses and the body to go towards where it wants to, where the intellect wants it to go. So in a perfect soul, our passions, the irascible, concupiscible passions, are obedient to the higher faculties of the intellect and the will. They will, although horses, I mean, if we don't control them, they will go here and there, and the chariot will fall down. So the will and the intellect will control the horses. So we should have a control over our lower appetites, our animal appetites. So this is a good image. This is easy to understand and visualize, and you can get the concept from this image. Okay, so coming towards the end of this session, this is a short session. Some of the corollaries to this idea. So we saw earlier that the animal and plant souls are bound to matter. Human soul is not bound to matter. Hence, it can exist even when the body dies. So this is why our soul is immortal. So even if the body dies, our soul can still live. And it does live because it has functions that are not bound to matter. Okay, so those functions can continue without matter, right? So, and because the soul is simple, that means it doesn't have different parts to it. The soul itself can live on even after the body is dead. Okay, so this is how we understand that the soul is immortal. So another corollary is this modern myth that the passion should not be suppressed, should not be controlled. You just vent your emotions, you just express your feelings. So in a certain way, it's okay. In a controlled way, yes, but you cannot let your passions go wild. Okay, that is behaving like an animal, and we are higher than animals. Okay, so this should be ordered to the higher faculties. Another corollary in Christian meditation, we direct our imagination, memory, intellect, and will towards the subject matter of the meditation. That's why when we say the rosary, we meditate on, okay, the first sorrowful mystery, the agony in the garden. So we meditate, we use our memory, we use our imagination, we picture that scene, then we use our intellect to see, to get rise up emotions. We use our will to say, yes, I will be sorry for my sins. So this is how we meditate. So this is meditation. The Eastern methods of meditation, the false methods of meditation, they say you empty your mind of all thought. First of all, this is not possible, and it's basically a useless thing to do. If you, I mean, it's as good as sleeping. So this is the difference between the Christian meditation and Eastern meditation. Now, another important corollary is so temptations which affect the senses, the memory, and the imagination. So we see things which are not good for us. We remember things that are not good for us. I mean, morally not good for us. We imagine, remember things. These do not become a sin just because they came into our mind. Okay, a lot of people have this problem that just because they have imagined something or they have seen something or they remembered something, they think that itself is a sin just because they thought of it. Okay, but till our will, intellect, and will make a consent to it, the sin does not happen. Okay, so that's why sin is defined as something wrong done knowingly and willingly. So knowingly, knowledge, intellect, and willingly, the appetite. So Saint Ignatius in his exercises has this thing. So he says if a thought comes into your mind and you immediately reject it, okay, there is no sin. If it comes into your mind and you derive some pleasure for some time and then reject it, okay, it's a venial sin. But if you consent to it and you say, oh, this I should do, or I wish I could do it, so that becomes a sin. That becomes a sin. So this is an important practical aspect of knowing the soul. So what is mortal sin? So why is some sin mortal and some sin not mortal? So mortal sin consists of rejection of God, okay, and choosing something other than the ultimate good. The ultimate good is God, right? So you remember I said that when I go to Starbucks, I also choose the means of going to Starbucks, right? So when I choose God as my ultimate good and which I should do, I will also choose all the means that will take me to heaven, to God. So I will obey God. I will follow His instructions. I will avoid sin. I will do all these things as means to reaching heaven. Mortal sin is when I knowingly and willingly choose some other thing like money or fame or sensual pleasures, anything apart from God as my final end, and I do things which take me to that side, to that. So you can't go into two different goals at the same time. I cannot have two opposite ends, right? I can't have my end as God, heaven, and I can't have my end as money or fame or anything. I have to choose between these two. And when I make a choice, I also choose the means to it. So that is why some sins are mortal sin. So mortal sin always involves this rejection of God as my ultimate good. And when I reject God as my ultimate good, of course, I lose my sanctifying grace. I'm no longer bound towards heaven, and of course, I will go to hell. Right? That is why mortal sin. That's why it is a mortal sin. It kills the soul. The purpose of the soul is to go to God. It kills it. Okay. So, sorry. So yeah. So our ultimate goal we saw in the first session was happiness. The ultimate happiness is when our intellect has the ultimate truth and our will has the ultimate good. So that is God. That is heaven. So once we are in heaven, do we lose our intellect? Do we lose our will? This is a question that used to confuse me. Like, can I choose to do a sin in heaven? Can I choose to sin in heaven? But the thing is, when I'm in heaven, my will is completely satisfied with the ultimate good. There is no other good that can even come close to it. So even though I still retain my intellect, I still retain my will, I have no possibility of sinning once I have attained heaven. Here on earth, because I cannot really fully see and I have not attained the ultimate good and ultimate truth, I can be deluded into thinking something else is good. I can be mistaken that something else is the ultimate good, and I can sin in that way while I'm still on earth. But once we are in heaven, we can't do that. Okay. So with that, I will conclude my session. It was shorter than I expected. Thank you all for listening, and I thank Ron especially for giving me these sources. These are the sources which I used, and these are available online. And I would suggest everybody to read it. Any questions? I'll just close with a Hail Mary, and if there are any questions, Ron will take the questions after this. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us.
God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Amen. Okay, any questions, any suggestions, or anything I have messed up? No questions? I will share the slides and the recording on to the group, Scholastic group. If anyone else is interested, also can.
Hello, Kiran.
Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, you gave the reason for why we are not able to. It's not possible to sin in heaven, right?
Correct, yeah.
Is it possible to give a similar reason on why it's no longer possible to be saved? Why salvation is not possible once you are in hell?
Once you're in hell, because we've made the choice. In our ultimate, we have made our choice of rejecting the ultimate good, which is God. And anything outside of God outside of heaven is considered hell. Apart from that, apart from the physical universe.
So how do we reconcile this with the concept of purgatory? Like in purgatory, it's still not that you have the choice to.
Purgatory, we don't have a choice. We have no choice once we die.
Okay, so purgatory is considered as a step to heaven, right?
Correct.
And okay.
It's a place of purification before going to heaven. If you go to purgatory, you are sure to go to heaven. So there is no. So
the reason why you go, So the reason why you go to purgatory is because you might have venial sins that are a result of your choice, right?
Yes. Venial sins do not constitute a rejection of the ultimate good.
Okay.
So plus the forgiven mortal sins, for which we have to pay a debt. We have to pay the temporal punishment. Temporal means time. It's in time. It's eternal. Though that punishment is purgatory.
Okay. Yeah, I think I may have to read on it. But thank you.
Besides that, I also think that is why we have divine simplicity, right? Like as opposed to what we are, where we operate through faculties. That is, we have different modes through which we operate which is why we have this division, the rational side, there is also vegetative, but God doesn't operate through faculties. That is, he doesn't have parts. So it's called the divine simplicity, right? So when we approach God, we are the ones who are, this is just my attempt, okay? But let's see if, I think this is what, I also read this elsewhere, in one of the treatments from a Thomist. So when someone approaches God, while he's simple, we are made out of parts. So we use our rational faculties, for example, and then therefore, whatever is subordinate to that also, and commit those acts which are good or bad. So once we approach God, we see God in his essence. That is the beatific vision. But before, I think at the judgment, someone who approaches God, this punishment is sort of voluntary. That is, there is this explanation for purgatory, right? Like if it's a plain glass, the light just goes through it. But if you have some dust or something, some debris, this heat actually, it's first of all not visible. It's not completely transparent, but it obstructs, right? That's the case with purgatory. And if it is entirely full of dust, the same light will kind of heat things up, right? So it's not, which is why we also say in Thomistic theology, right? We say justice and mercy are the sides of the same coin. So this man who approaches God seeking justice, this righteous man, he will, to him, God gives him justice out of himself, okay? But at the same time, if you have a bad man, he receives this judgment, but all from the same God. It's not from a different part. So I think it depends on the person who approaches them, which is why even that other quote, right, where it says the gate of hell is locked from inside. I think it ties into this because what we are doing is we are natural. That is, at the end of this, we ourselves commit that we are bad at the time we go and present ourselves in front of God, right? We see this in ourselves. That light actually shows all these things that we have done even more clearly, and how much that has offended God. And it is also said that we ourselves will throw ourselves into hell because of what we see. And I think these concepts have evolved based on this divine simplicity thing. I don't know if I've complicated things, but essentially that's what this is. What do you think, Alan?
It's interesting when you think of it in that way, in that sense. Can you share with me the reference from where you read this? I think it would be.
Yeah, I think multiple references. One, we'll have to look into divine simplicity, where I'll give you that, and then as for this judgment, I will have to see. I will send it to you once I find it, or I'll put it in the group maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And I think there's also one other thing that we can bring into this. St. Thomas also has this concept of daughters of lust, for example, or any disorder, for example. Once your will is inclined, once you pick up not pick up a habit, once you do something bad or good, you're more inclined to do that the next time around. Okay, so which is why, for example, in the case of lust, I think we have 8 daughters of lust, and one of them is rashness. The second is blindness. So what happens is, once you're into this sin, the next time it's all the more easier to fall into that sin. I think this reference is there in the story of the Moses and Pharaoh, where the Pharaoh's heart is hardened. Okay, so I think there's this interplay where sometimes it is referred as the Pharaoh hardened his heart, and other times God hardened his heart. What happens is, this is sort of a punishment. So every time you commit a sin, you're more inclined to do that sin the next time around. And so another thing is obstinacy, along with this blindness, rashness, and obstinacy. And so imagine at this point, when you have committed a mortal sin, I think we are depraved as much. That is, we are more inclined to opt for that sin rather than God. So I think that's what happens at judgment as well, which is why, again, that quote, the gates of hell is locked from inside.
Yeah, this one brings up a thing about habits and virtues. I didn't want to bring it in because it'll come too much. But our cardinal virtues, the 4 cardinal virtues, are there: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. They relate to each of our faculties. Prudence guides the intellect. Justice guides the will. Justice is something that we do to others, right? So our will is guided by justice, the cardinal virtue of justice. Our concupiscible passions, like simple wanting, desire, and all that, is controlled by temperance. And our concupiscible passions are governed by the cardinal virtue of fortitude. So that's why concupiscible passions, when we fall into concupiscible passion, our temperance is lost. So if we fall into one kind of concupiscible passion, like gluttony, then it automatically weakens our will against, towards the sin of lust and other fleshly sins. Okay, so it's the same way for the others also, for the concupiscible. That's why when the fathers say, when they give a penance, usually if there's a sin related to the bodily things, they will say fasting. That's why they say fasting helps with eradicating the vice of lust. So all these things are connected. I didn't want to go on to the cardinal virtues because it will become too much, but that's a good thing to read, and I'll send that link also. Any other questions, or shall we close?
I don't think there's any other questions. But anyway, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Kiran Anna, because he kind of stepped in and did these presentations. And thanks a lot, Anna. I think many people have benefited from this. At least we're able to start the conversation on the topic. And Alan as well.
Thanks, man, Kiran.
Yeah. And Alan as well, because Alan has been recording this, and we're able to put this on YouTube for people to go back and look into this. So thanks, Alan. And Rachel. Rachel isn't here, but she was also involved in this. She was trying to open up the links and share it with people, and others as well. Gretel has also shared. And thanks everyone. If I've left out anyone, then I would like to thank them as well. And we have a group the Scholastic Defense. Maybe if anyone's not already there, I don't know how will we put that group's link here, Anna? I'm not sure, Alan. Should we put here in the chat? Does that work?
We can
Yeah,
send in the
if we-
chat over here.
In the chat here,
Do we
right?
have do we have the invite link?
I don't know how that works. I'm not very familiar with these things. So what I will do is I'll just look into that now, right now in 2 minutes, and see if there's an invite link, and then I'll try to send it to you, Alan.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Yeah, there's an invite link.
I've shared the link.
Okay, that's the one. Okay, so anyone who's interested in joining, they can join here. So we'll conclude then, Anna.
Yep.
I will wrap it up. I think conclusion's done. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks
thank
everyone
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kiran.
Thank you.
Thank you.